Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Now, today's episode, we're just going to be quick firing the 5 guys that I have that I believe are under the most pressure heading into this postseason. Now, pressure is defined by multiple different things, but depending on what your criteria for pressure is. Pressure could either be pressure from like the media and fans and the expectations that we put on certain players and what like the expectations franchises will put on their superstars. And then pressure could just be like the general load that they've been given and just how much they will need to execute this season, the level of capacity of responsibilities that they actually have upon them heading into this postseason and how that might differ compared to year. And that's why we're kind of balancing that mold here. Just what is being asked of these players in this upcoming postseason and then what we are expecting in general as fans and as the media for these players heading to the postseason. And now this isn't in any order. And when I say pressure, it's not like if these guys don't respond or don't have exceptional postseasons, we're going to just drop them and drop these narratives that we've been forming for them. And that's why I'll start it off. And number one, we're going with Nikola Jokic here. And obviously if Nikola Jokic doesn't perform to, the overwhelmingly best player in the world title that we've been giving him for the past few years, that doesn't mean that we're going to drop any sort of narrative that we have for him that, there's a possibility that he'll enter the top 10 players of all time. But he does have pressure on him. And the pressure kind of stems from the fact, again, in terms of in the modern history of the NBA, there's only been really probably a handful of players that had just outright unanimously been the best player in the world. Most famously, you had the Shaq run of that three-peat in LA. Absolutely dominant. No one questioned him as the best player in the world. You probably had the stretch with LeBron as well. You might have had the stretch in the 90s, obviously, with Michael Jordan. And then before that, maybe Kareem was the last person to just unanimously hold that title. Obviously, that title ebbs and flows each year, but in terms of players to just have a little stranglehold on that, Jokic is the first person since LeBron to have a stranglehold of that title. And he hasn't really let go of it since it. But SGA, after the finals MVP last year and just how great SGA has been this year, Nikola is being very well tested right now, especially if Shea can get the job done for a second year in a row. It would be pretty hard to deny him that title. But Nikola's got to assert that if he really wants that to be his actual legacy from here on out. He's held that title for at least 3 years, if not 4 or 5, since he started winning these MVPs, because the offensive impact has been absurd for years. But the postseason success has been pretty dull for the past 2 years now, since coming off that title. He actually hasn't made a conference finals since 2023. Obviously, that loss to Minnesota and then obviously losing to OKC last year. But also just the actual level of production and absurd efficiency has actually gone downhill year by year. Last year, we're talking about a guy that averaged 26, 13, and 8 in the postseason. Again, against a terrifying defense in that second round against OKC. We're talking about a guy that did average 4 turnovers a game. And that staggering level of efficiency that we were so used to seeing always translates to the postseason. That dipped to just 54% effective field goal percentage last year compared to about 60% and 59% between 2022 and 2023 in those postseasons. So we just have to see him put it all together. And the pressure also comes from, not because Jokic doesn't perform in the postseason, but more because the Nuggets have gone absolutely all in, as you'd expect, with a guy like Jokic on their team. But they've built the perfected roster around Nikola's strengths to amplify those strengths as an absolute visionary on the floor, as a post-up fulcrum, but then also to hide a lot of his weaknesses with this super smart, cohesive defense with just super high IQ players around him. And in terms of going all in on the trade, like Cam Johnson, giving up some of those valuable picks that honestly could be like big lottery picks in a few years' time because we don't know what state Jokic will be in. But also just giving up all their draft stock for a guy like Cam Johnson. That is a big move of faith. Giving up a guy like Michael Porter Jr. and then also bringing in all these depth pieces and not really investing too much in their youth and future. That is them going all in for Nikola at this point in time. And the fact is, he's got the best co-stars around him in terms of Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon to me. In terms of Jamal and Aaron Gordon, if you zoomed out and looked back 5 years ago, if you actually thought, what is the peak that Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon can actually get to as players, you wouldn't get further to what they actually are playing at right now. Aaron Gordon's actually been one of the most impactful defensive players in the league very underrated on that end still. And then also just the shot making, the play finishing is literally just star tier. And we're talking about like an all-star impact guy in more or less a role player's role right now. Jamal Murray's also just been a top 15 player in the league and maybe top 10, honestly, if we're just zooming out from just this regular season. He's been probably a top 3 pull-up shooter in the NBA right now. So just the tough shot making is fully there. Defensively, you can get by him in your scheme. Like you wouldn't see a better Jamal Murray, like version of Jamal Murray than what he's performing at right now. So basically the fact is, this is the best chance for him to actually win a title. And if he is the best player in the world, and this is a guy that probably could be a top 10 player in NBA history, when you have all these factors going for you and the fact that the Nuggets are healthy, unlike a lot of teams around the league, he's got to put it together. These are heavy all-time expectations, but we're expecting Nikola Jokic to come through there. Second up, though, we got Alperen Şengün. So similar mold to Jokic, we're talking about a post-up fulcrum. But Şengün hasn't proven that he's the guy that is worth investing everything into, like what Jokic has proved for Denver. And yes, Alperen's 23 years old, but franchises move focus fast in today's NBA. And that is why Alperen Şengün, after last year, second seed Houston, first round exit, now they bring in Kevin Durant. They got a lot of star talent. They have so much high physicality, athleticism around him defensively. And he's just got to put something together at least. And that something, hopefully, would be like a really high contested run at the conference finals against whoever they'd have to play in the second round, which would probably be OKC at this point in time. In terms of just the offensive efficiency, though, like when we look at post-up fulcrums, what are they supposed to do best? Gain the highest efficiency looks in the half court continuously with their physical advantages against, whatever team they're up against. That's why Nikola Jokic is great. That's why guys like Domantas Sabonis are such efficient offensive hubs. But the thing is, Alperen Şengün, just obviously the efficiency has improved quite significantly this year across the board, but it still hasn't translated to the postseason just yet, as in we just haven't seen it be weaponized. Also, he's still underwhelming overall when you do compare him to guys like Sabonis and Nikola Jokic when we are talking about those tough push shots. The thing is, it's a hard expectation to put him up against. But when you are a post-up fulcrum and you're a European center who prefers to use their vision advantages with the spatial awareness stuff as a passing fulcrum, as a passing hub, do a lot of DHO sort of activity. The point is, those centers are typically easily exploited on the defensive end. And that is no different from what we've seen from Alperen Şengün for basically his entire career. But the point is, you need to be exceptionally good as an offensive player if you want to satisfy giving up a lot on the defensive end. And Şengün just hasn't offered the bolstering amount of offensive value to satisfy how much he actually gives up on the defensive end. Guy like Nikola Jokic, he's actually a much better defender in terms of just the IQ and the hands and coming up to the level. And he's one of the most disciplined centers and anchors that you'll find in the league, Nikola Jokic. But also Jokic just provides the GOAT tier offensive value. And that's why Denver can get by with him and why he still provides this juggernaut value overall, even though he is athletically limited. Şengün just doesn't do that yet. And he is 23, right? So that's the point. We're going to wait and see what he turns into. But Şengün, he doesn't have the same over-the-top advantages like Nikola Jokic because he actually is a little bit more undersized to a guy like Jokic. And that's what makes his shot dart generally tougher as well. And this is a guy that settles for a lot of really high arcing looks in that intermediate zone too. It's not just all pure post-up, post-hook types of looks and all these beautiful drop steps that look really simple and effective. It's a lot of high arcing floaters in the mid-range. He doesn't have this, again, not the same over-the-top advantage luxury that Jokic has either. He's not the same behemoth of size yet like Nikola Jokic. And that's where the touch won't probably reach where Jokic is at yet. But it just isn't super elite at this point in time. And again, it needs to be given his archetype. And the point is, Houston, for the past few years, they've generally picked their direction, which is to see, and they're not committing fully to Alperen Şengün, but they're trying to see if he's the actual cornerstone superstar to build around for the future as the sole offensive creator for this team. And he just hasn't really proved that improvement as significantly this year. And again, the NBA moves fast. So he's 23, but the NBA moves really fast here. And expectations move really fast for players like this. I just think Şengün needs to assert that 1A level future this postseason, especially against the matchup in LA. Like, he has no excuses to outplay DeAndre Ayton. And I know Ayton's been playing really hard basketball the past few weeks and past month or so, but if he gets his ass cooked on the margins desperately, and this is a really contested series that goes to 7, and look, we don't fully know what's going to be happening with Luka and Austin. I think they both will sit out, especially Luka. I just don't see them really winning. Even if they win this series, I just don't see them beating OKC or either Denver or San Antonio. So I prefer them to rest him, but Şengün has no reason not to dominate and showcase that future 1A ceiling. He has no excuse not to do that. And then defensively as well, he just has to prove that against LA, like, at least he can be credible out in space. LA is going to run a ton of smart action, especially without their star creators there, with LeBron at the helm. We know how much movement they've been running, especially with Luke Kennard, with a lot of that those offensive duties, trying to juice up as much out of his movement. Şengün's going to be hunted as much as they can, and he just has to prove that he can move out in space and actually cover angles, level out drives, in drop coverage too, and use those hands, use the anticipation and the IQ, which are supposed to be his biggest advantages. That's what he's got to prove. And we do have to just say, I'm not looking for this superstar postseason from Şengün, but given the first round matchup, he should feast relatively nicely. I know the Lakers are going to run a ton of zone. He's just got to figure some shit out right now. Again, at the rim, like, this is a guy that shoots 68% when he does get to the rim. That's the 49th percentile among big men in the NBA, and that's because a lot of the stuff is push shots and hook shots. He's not absurdly athletic. He's not finishing the easiest looks at the rim. And the point is with Şengün, and when I talked about he relies on a tougher shot diet, 50% of this guy's looks come from the entire mid-range section. That includes in the paint and restricted area too. But that is like a heavy shot diet that doesn't prioritize pure efficiency like what you see from guys like Nikola Jokic, which is the blueprint for Şengün. And it is a dull stat as well, but the fact is, this guy hasn't improved his production load for 3 years now. He's producing the exact same that he has for 3 years. Like, the individual PER stat that he's been delivering, I think it's like 20, just blank 20. It's been the exact same and stagnated for 3 years. And this guy's 23 years old. We have to see it trying to translate in the postseason, and the next regular season we have to see an actual step up in terms of what he's actually producing for Houston on the offensive end. Number 3, De'Aaron Fox. Another relatively mid-tier guy, mid-tier star. So he's an all-star, but he's very much on the cusp there as a talent. This is a guy that needs to prove that he is the real star that can actually shine and keep afloat San Antonio's perimeter creation reps, especially when Steph Castle inevitably hits a wall against these playoff defenses. This is, again, Steph Castle, he's a star in himself, but this is a guy that's in his second year in the NBA and has a lot of flaws right now in terms of just the lack of skill and the lack of fluidity as a jump shooter, really across the board with anything for Steph Castle. And that's the point, is that De'Aaron Fox is going to have to be on standby for when that does happen. Because, again, San Antonio aren't going to shift up what they've been doing. Steph is going to be creating most of what they do. And then Fox will either just equally share those reins, or he'll take a bit more of a sidekick seat there on the perimeter. But when Steph does run into trouble, they're going to be looking at De'Aaron Fox to really be the guy to bail them out, especially in these clutch time situations. And that is really important, all right? Victor Wembanyama is not a very good clutch ball handler or clutch scorer in general. And the playoff environment won't really suit him either. A lot of that responsibility is going to be on De'Aaron Fox. And he's just going to have to get himself in rhythm, even if he's only still taking 14 looks a game. Like, this season, this is a guy that, again, takes 14 looks each game. It's very different than what it was like in Sacramento. He's just going to need to know how to find that momentum down the stretch of games, even when he might not be actively playing himself into that aggression. So the point with De'Aaron Fox, we haven't really heard too much about him. I know he made the All-Star case because of all the injuries that happened. I didn't totally agree with it, but the fact is, in San Antonio, this guy's been fine. He hasn't been incredible by any means, but he's been fine, and he's been average for what he's been expected to do. And obviously, again, less reigns, but he's going to actually be needed to either be this strong on-ball creator down the stretch of games, but he's also going to need to be a guy that can actually be an on and off-ball machine just in general. This is a guy that's going to need to convert on his spot-ups. The three-point shooting has been pretty average this year. He's 33% on threes in general, on 5.5 attempts a game. That is decent three-point reps that he's getting. 33% isn't a sexy mark at all, but he's making 38% of his catch-and-shoot threes. It's the pull-up threes that when he's more or less not in the same rhythm that he would have been in Sacramento, because again, less looks, less reps, less volume. But he's only making 28% of his pull-up threes in general. So the three-point shot on and off the ball are going to have to be huge factors for this guy. And at this point in time, and this is just a little jog in mind that I had when I was writing down my notes for this little episode, but the fact is, De'Aaron Fox, and for the past few years, as he's wanting to carve himself out as one of the best scoring ball handlers in the NBA, he's always leaned into this super diverse shot palette. What is De'Aaron Fox's biggest advantage as a scorer or creator in general? It's his speed and athleticism. This isn't a guy, though, that actually weaponizes that to get directly to the rim. This is a guy that leans more super diverse into his shot palette. He likes a lot of those intermediate looks. He likes the floaters. He likes the step back mid-range looks. He likes cooking up on the perimeter as well for three balls. This isn't a guy that actually pressures the rim continuously with that mindset all the time. And that's why when you look into when you're shifting his role from Sacramento as the first ball handling option to more or less the second ball handling option now in San Antonio, when he is that second option for strong spurts, that means when you do lean into a super diverse shot palette, that means you kind of are less effective in terms of generating consistent offense. This isn't a guy that's a super high-level mid-range scorer. He's not a super high-level three-point shooter. But when he equally delves into all of those different zones and he has less reps to get in rhythm from all those three zones, he's going to be less consistent as an offensive creator for San Antonio with the less rhythm that he's getting from all three zones. And that's why when you do diverse your shot palette, that usually is only up for the true superstars in the NBA, the guys that get 18 to 20 looks a game, for the guys that get 5 isolation possessions and 10 pick and rolls every single game. That's not what De'Aaron Fox has been given this year. He's been a guy that's taking 14 looks a game, not 20. And that's a significant delve down in the actual rhythm that he's been able to actually get himself into. Again, when you diversify the shots that you are aiming for, you're going to be less consistent in them when you get less reps and less comfortability to hunt those throughout games. That's where De'Aaron Fox, again, he's been a little bit less effective this year. And it's because of how he actually approaches the game as a scorer. And there are perks to that, especially when you're playing with a guy like Steph Castle. Very rim pressure focused, because that's really the only thing he can do, and hunting those elevated push shot looks. But Fox, obviously there is merit into him delving into that super diverse shot palette, but he's very pull-up heavy and he doesn't have the same looks to get himself into that rhythm. Point is, the pressure on Fox is that he needs to be super malleable on his role coming into this postseason, depending on what San Antonio will need, depending on how well Victor actually performs as an offensive creator, depending on how well Steph Castle performs as the primary ball handling option. So again, he's going to need to either be dominant ball handling force, when they do inevitably play Denver in the second round, most likely, he's going to need to absolutely torch Denver out of this world and absolutely torch them with his athleticism as a ball handler. Or he's just going to need to be this skilled off-ball source who kind of acts as the veteran on the floor that connects everything together. That is a big load of pressure put on him. But again, this guy hasn't been bad this year whatsoever. De'Aaron Fox has actually held his end of the bargain and done the role that they've actually asked of him. He's just came off a season, 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists on 55% effective field goal percentage. And he is this team's second best player. He doesn't get the second most reigns on this team, but he's their second best player. And it'll be interesting to see what he actually can do for this team, considering the multitude of tasks they're going to be giving to him. And I didn't even mention the defensive stuff, but anyways, that's it. In the defensive tasks that they'll also throw at him. Number 4, though, we're going to quickly churn through these next 2 guys because I don't think these guys have that much pressure on them in general, to be honest. I just had to chuck them on this list, and I do want to talk about them. Number 4 is Jalen Williams from OKC. All-Star, All-NBA Jalen Williams. And the point is, after the massive staggering contract, it was like $280 million for 5 years for OKC, and the actual buy-in from OKC as well. Last year, we're looking at all the trade rumors circling, especially around Giannis. And a lot of the fan base was growing kind of tired of J-Dub, which, again, a lot of impatience there. But in the playoff run as well, like there were ebbs and flows until he really got into that rim pressure mindset, which he really ticked into the conference finals and the finals. But before first round against Memphis, he was pretty great. But in that semifinal against Denver, there was really no excuse for playing the way he did. And the point is, OKC and our fan base, the management, they've all completely bought in. They've given him this massive contract, and they should. Like this is a guy that dropped 40 points in a finals game. This is a guy that's a top 15 defender on the planet. This is a guy who has the 16th best player in the NBA at the end of last season with everything that he achieved and just him just being a top 3 most versatile player on the planet in general. But he hasn't been that this year, and the fact is, he's been pretty dull this year in the regular season, and it's really just due to the nagging injuries, obviously, and that has led to a lack of star signals that we got last year. So heading into this postseason, we just haven't seen this guy be a star just yet, and that is concerning for OKC if they want to at least match what they were last year. Obviously, it started with hip injuries coming into the year, and then it went back to the wrist injuries that were plaguing him. Now it's the hamstring as well. But none of these seem to be that significant. That's why I'm saying the pressure is on J-Dub is because he just needs to perform. Either way. I don't think he's dealing with these massive injuries. Again, I'm not too adverse into the medical dictionary for what he's actually dealing with, but he just has to perform. And the point is with J-Dub, what's interesting actually with J-Dub is that when you zoom out of his career, when you look at his actual shot touch on the floor, he's shown he can be elite from literally every zone on the floor. And he's had this weird fluctuation in his career from literally shot touch from everywhere on the floor. And it started off and when this guy was making under 44% of his threes in 2024 and one of the best top 5 pull-up shooters in the NBA by efficiency. It started off there and then he just fully dipped off there and he started delving into more of that high level mid-range looks, elevating on the elbows out of pick and roll on these tougher looks that were a bit more attainable on a possession-to-possession basis. But now it's delving, and we saw this shift in the postseason, and it was more evident when he's on the floor this year, but it's fully rim pressure focused right now. So he's just fully delved in this weird fluctuation across his career. But that's not a bad thing. He's 25, but he is also young. So we're still seeing it come fully together for him, even though he has put it together for a title as a backseat second option. But we just need to see him perform this year. And the scary part for Jalen Williams is that he's usually this strong off-ball player, and mostly because of the backline athleticism and the backline cutting, some of the screening that he can provide there too. And then in transition, this is a guy that's really strong and powerful in transition as well, especially off the turnovers and getting out in those lanes. But the scary part is the off-ball shooting. This is a guy that is 0.83 points per possession on spot-ups. That is the 13th percentile. So in terms of attacking closeouts and punishing closeouts, he's been really, really shit-house there. And there's a guy that's under 35% on his catch and shoot threes. That is not a good mark. I know he had the wrist injuries coming in, but he's just got to get himself back to that rhythm that he was at least last year, which wouldn't have been that much higher than where he's at now, but it's just a touch higher, obviously. And he's just 30% on threes overall. Obviously, the wrist injuries, but he's just got to shoot the ball better for OKC and for what they need, because they can't play Jared McCain and Isaiah Joe significant minutes in this postseason if they want to be this absolute defensive powerhouse, which they've proven that has won them their titles. But they need to have credible shooting even in those lineups. It's going to come from Lou Dort, especially, but it's also going to have to come from Jalen Williams there. And the thing is, also, it's not just the off-ball stuff, the on-ball stuff. yes, in this season, he still gave you 17, 5, and 5 in 28 minutes. So that's actually decent production on 51% effective field goal percentage. Not bad, not great, pretty average to be honest. But they desperately need J-Dub's creation and his driving reliability. And without that, they won't dominate their transition game the way they do, and they'll become overly reliant on AJ Mitchell as that secondary creator in a playoff environment, which I have a lot of faith in AJ Mitchell. I think he's a really great player. I think he's definitely 6th Man of the Year candidate. I think his driving game is extremely sustainable for the postseason. But again, obviously J-Dub just provides way more firepower when we talk about the athleticism, the over-the-top advantages, the pull-up shooting that he gives you instead of AJ Mitchell. And that's why they do need him back. But in saying that, the on-ball stuff actually has been pretty decent when we have seen it. Again, he's in the mid-70s of percentiles for both isolations and pick and rolls. So for a guy that's supposedly out of rhythm, this is still a powerhouse driver of the basketball right now. So hopefully we'll see him put it together. And I know he's coming off a title, so the expectations shouldn't be that high in theory, but it's been a really up and down year, and there's been a lot of nagging injuries, but he did get the bag from OKC, and he's got all the buy-in from OKC. He can't just let go of the rope a year after. Especially when this is like their best year to actually repeat before Wemby fully takes off too. They've got to capitalize on this year, and it's a big part for Jalen Williams there. Now, number 5, last one. Donovan Mitchell. Now, he's obviously superstar, so Jokic and Mitchell are the two superstars I'm really eyeing off in this postseason, but it's more to do with Cleveland's expectations coming into the year. Team I had as the third best contender coming into the year, and I actually believed in them all throughout, especially after the trade deadline as well. So we talk about a team, again, maybe top 3 to 5 expectations coming into the year, and this is a team that probably had the best trade deadline out of any team in basketball in terms of bringing in Keon Ellis, bringing in Dennis Schroeder, and then also they found unique pieces like Naquan Tomlin this year, and like Jalen Tyson has been absolutely unbelievable this year too. So they found a lot of gems across their roster, a lot of really high playing, role playing talent, and these guys that fit perfectly next to Donovan Mitchell and what he's supposed to do. These are really quality physical defensive guys, really smart high IQ guys with a ton of skill in terms of converting on those catch and shoot threes, which is literally the blueprint to build around Donovan Mitchell. Just simplify the reads that he has to make, because this isn't an overly expertised, playmaker who can make all these contorted reads all across the floor. He can make simple reads across the floor, rim pressure focus. He can make these simple kickouts, and they have the personnel around him to be able to convert those in theory for a high level offense. The point is though, this is Donovan's 9th consecutive playoff run out of 9 years in the league, which is actually pretty incredible. He's never missed the playoffs, but he still has never had a conference finals berth. And he's been the number 1 offensive option his entire career, even since he was a rookie. And the fact is, we just haven't seen that conference finals berth yet. Again, we might attribute too much value to, has he made the finals before? Has he made the conference finals before? Because there is variance depending on what conference you're playing in, what teams you have. Obviously, it's more of a team achievement rather than individual achievement, obviously. But he has made a conference finals. I'm holding that against him. And I think he's got a bit of pressure. Not too much of the individual pressure, but the team pressure. And this is a guy that performs individually. Like, he actually does hold his end up of the bargain. He doesn't really lose the value of what he does best, which is to literally score the ball at physical will. He does that every postseason. It just hasn't translated to elite impact on team offense. And we are comparing him because, again, Donovan Mitchell's a superstar. He's not an all-star, all-NBA just level talent. He's a superstar in this league, and he needs to be compared against the elite offensive engines across the league. And these are, he's lost to Tyrese Halliburton last year, who, in theory, I think Donovan Mitchell's a better basketball player in a vacuum than. If not, they're in the same tier. Jalen Brunson, you're telling me Donovan Mitchell isn't in the same tier as Jalen Brunson, if not better? So it is interesting, but he just has to prove that he can perform. Jason Tatum, he's not in the same tier as Jason Tatum when he's healthy, but right now, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, with the way Tatum's coming back from injury, Donovan Mitchell is in the same tier as anyone in the East. Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Maxey, anyone. He's in the same tier. He's just got to actually outperform them and will his team through to at least a conference finals appearance, in my opinion. Fact is, with Donovan as well, again, we talk about how he holds his end up at the bargain as a scorer, but the fact is as well, when you're not a super effective visionary or super elite creative playmaker on the floor, when you're not that, you need to be absurdly skilled and super, just a juggernaut scorer if you want to satisfy being a number 1 option in this league. Best case in scenario is Kawhi Leonard back in Toronto. He's just a Herculean level reliable scorer as a perimeter scorer. And that is what satisfied him not being a very strong creator. Not a very strong passing initiator and advantage creator in general. So Donovan, yes, he does hold his end on the bargain, but he needs to actually go beyond that this postseason. Especially, they made the James Harden trade, and they are healthy. They are healthy, obviously. And I don't want to overstate too much about Donovan not being, a satisfactory offensive engine. This is a guy that's averaged 28, 5, and 5 in 3 years in Cleveland in playoff runs in general on 52% effective field goal percentage, but he's got to up that to maybe 55% effective field goal percentage and maybe give you 35 and 5 against possibly favorable matchups. We just have to see it. But anyway, this went for a bit longer than I thought, but those are my 5 guys that I think have the most pressure on them coming into this year's postseason. It'll be interesting to see how they shape up. I'm pretty optimistic on all of these 5 guys actually performing really well and those narratives turning into really positive stuff for these guys in their career trajectories. We'll see what happens though. We're starting obviously the actual playoffs in a few days, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I appreciate you guys for listening. Let me know if those are the 5 guys that you guys would agree with, or if there's someone I missed out on. Maybe like a Jalen Brunson deserved to be here. Maybe with all the expectations we have on SGA, maybe he should be here. You guys let me know. I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.